Welcome to the Tenaru Foundation's webinar series. This session's topic is Advanced Page Layouts and Galleries. In this session, I will cover creating beautiful landing pages with galleries and other custom layouts. I will also talk about additional page components that you can use to enhance your content. All right, let's get started. Now, there are a few concepts we need to cover before I can get into applying our advanced web features. The first is the WYSIWYG. This funny word is an acronym that stands for What You See is What You Get. And this is one way to refer to the rich text editor that has buttons to format your text. In this webinar, however, we are going deeper than the WYSIWYG by way of the source button, which switches us to the HTML code editor. Editing your HTML code directly, you can make small changes that have a big impact, like turning a simple hyperlink into a bright, attractive button. For many users, the options available in the WYSIWYG are sufficient to set up a quality website, and this is what I covered primarily in the Building Web Pages webinar. If you're not comfortable working with the source code, you can still create a quality website just by using our built-in features. And then you can ease yourself into trying some source code as you feel comfortable. However, today's webinar is an advanced webinar for a reason. During this session, I will be pointing out a few HTML basics as we go along, so you understand what we're looking at, how to read it, and you have enough knowledge to use the code we provide to enhance your content. The first advanced option I want to show you in this webinar is one you can use within the image galleries to add content on top of your images. This style is called hero content or hero code and works with the full width inline gallery layout and can be used on any page, including your home page. Hero content is great for marketing or landing pages where you want to focus more on a big picture feeling with your images and then direct users to deeper content. This example shows some of the alignment options as well as demonstrating that you can add buttons, videos, or even other images on top of your gallery image. The gallery image provides a backdrop for the message you're trying to convey and is then faded somewhat to make the content on top stand out. There aren't specific dimensions for the images in this layout as the system automatically crops them to fit the space. They will be cropped horizontally so your images don't get too short on mobile. Usually with this layout, your text is added on top of the images, so the images need to be tall enough to show the text on every device. All right, now I am going to switch to our admin manual here in just a second. And I'm going to look at the Advanced Page Options section. This can be found under the Websites drop-down menu, or it's posted in the websites menu on the page. The Advanced Page Options section has a lot of what I'm covering in this webinar, so I will be referring back to it frequently. So let's take a look at the page that explains our hero code. On this page, you will get an explanation of what hero code is and what it does. We also lay out the instructions for you to make it work on your web page. I'm going to go through these steps here in a moment, and you can refer back to these instructions as you get the hang of using your hero code. Then we have some sample code that you can use to start with, as well as different styles for alignment. One of the great things about our starter example is that it includes the two main text elements that are styled to appear best on top of images: heading 2 or H2 and paragraph or P. It also uses a button link, which I will cover later on in this webinar.
Annika, real quick, could you scroll back up to the top and show us what text is H2 and P?
Sure. So at the top of this page, I do have a simple example for you. This one we have, this is hero code. That is the H2 header style with a little extra styling to make some of it bold. And then this here, use it to add content on top of gallery images. That's the paragraph text. And these are formatted to be white instead of black or red as they would normally appear throughout the page. And then they have a little drop shadow, so they stand out further from your image.
Right, but that extra styling happens automatically when you make it hero style,
Yep, that's
when you apply
included
the hero stuff. Yeah.
in the hero style.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so when you are adding the content for your hero class on top of your image, you can mix and match elements like header to paragraph, button text, and some of the other things I'm even going to talk about today to showcase your content on top of your image. At the very bottom of our additional code options section, I want to draw your attention to our other text alignment code. We have these added here now for you. You can use these alignment classes anywhere on your website. So you can use it in the main body content to right align or center align your text. All right, so let's look at how we're going to apply hero code to a page. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go into the editor for, I've got a sample page set up to work with today, and I have some images already added to my bottom gallery. So the first thing I want to do is make sure that my layout is selected as full width inline. This is the only layout that this hero code will work on, so we need to set it to that. Then hovering over an image, I have a 3-dot menu here in the corner, and I need to edit this image now. Okay, and now I'm going to switch to the source view for my description. Before I go any further with this, I'd like to point out a few HTML basics in this code now. So this is content I've already added, and you'll see it now in HTML markup. Each text element is wrapped in tags. Um, each one has an opening tag and a closing tag. Each one, almost always you'll have an opening tag and a closing tag before you move to the next element, but your tagged content can nest. So you can have like a bold element within a paragraph. So let's add some hero code. One option here would be to copy the entire hero code sample and use that as a starting place for adding code to an image. And then you could modify the content from there. However, I already have content on my image that I want to use, so I'm just going to copy the parts of the sample code that define the hero formatting. The first part I need to copy is the opening div tag. And this div tag has two classes, hero content and an alignment option. Classes are a way to add styles to your code, and the hero content class is basically wrapping whatever content you have to make it look good on top of your images, and then you choose your alignment of where on the image you want that to be placed. As you saw in the example, the hero content class also responds to different screen widths so the content still looks good. This is really important for your phone users. I'll refer to classes that do this as responsive, and most of the example code I'll be showing today is responsive code. Now, we don't need anything between the opening and closing div tags since I already have my content. Those in-between parts can be pretty much anything that you want. So let's copy this and go back to the editor. Now for this, I'm going to click ahead of the very first element of my content and paste that opening div tag. And I'm going to use keyboard shortcuts so you won't see me clicking anything. But now I've pasted in the opening div tag with the classes to define this as hero content. Next, I want to go to the end of my content and I need to close this element. So I'm going to type an end div tag, a closing div tag. And you know this is the closing tag because of the slash in front of div. And same with closing the paragraph tag. So let's save that. And now, with many of the style changes I'm going to show you today, the styles aren't going to appear in the WYSIWYG. I'm going to go back in there so you can see it. So this just looks like my regular text that I have added. In order to check our work, we do need to save and view the page to see how it looks to visitors. So let's go ahead and do that now. We'll save the image editor and then we'll save the page editor. And let's browser back to bring that up again and visit. Okay, this was in the bottom gallery, so we'll come down here. Here we go. So I have a gallery image with text on top and even a button. Now, a pro tip with doing a lot of these code options. When you go into the editor, and I'll get back into the gallery to show you this, you can still edit the main body of your content, your text, your styling, bold, hyperlink, that kind of thing, in the WYSIWYG. And it's not going to change the hero class that you have wrapping the text. So for example, I'm going to take the word skills and I'm going to use the WYSIWYG to make it bold. And let's also add a hyperlink. I'm going to add a hyperlink to my hero code page on the admin manual. So let's pop that in here. This is another website, so I'm also going to set the target as new windows so I don't lose my main website. Okay, so now that I've added those sets of code to this, switching to source view, you can see that our div class with the hero content is still here at the top. And then our additional code is here wrapping the word skills, where we have a hyperlink. And then we have our bold code. And then each of those tags is closed before we move on to the next characters. So let's save that. And oh,
And just a note, when you make changes to an image there, you don't need to save the page. So the only reason why Annika needed to save the page when first setting up this hero code is because she needed to change the gallery layout of the bottom gallery. But now she can keep making any changes that she wants to these images, and they're gonna show up automatically as soon as she saves that image.
mhm. So here's, for example, then the word skills is bold and hyperlinked. In this case, it doesn't look great because it's red on a really dark kind of image. So I probably wouldn't actually use this on a live page, but it's great as setting up an example for this webinar. And then one last thing about the editor. So I have changed some formatting on the text, but if you want to change the alignment on your hero code, you'll have to go back into source view. But then all you need to change here is this alignment. So if I wanted to make this centered instead of align left, I can do that in the editor. And then the hero code is going to move to the center of the image. All right, so now I am going to go back to the admin manual, to the advanced page options section. And we're going to go through, I'm going to work my way through the other features you can use to enhance your content. First, I want to take a brief look at three of the most advanced coding options we have. And those are collapsible panels, modals or pop-ups, and tabs. I'm just going to show what's possible with these three options, but I'm not going to get into the details of how to add them to your website. These are some of the more advanced coding options we offer and should only be tackled if you feel confident with coding already and you have a team that can maintain it going forward. We don't necessarily recommend them due to how challenging they are for the average council webmaster to get right and to maintain. If you want to apply any of these to your website, we provide sample code on the admin manual to get you started. And then you'll need to modify the code to meet your needs. So let's take a look at these collapsible panels. So we have two styles programmed for you to use. The first is framed, which sets up each section in a gray box which expands when clicked. And then we have button, which when clicked will open up a gray box to display your content. Now let's look at modals. Modals are a way of offering a lightweight pop-up on your website that will activate when clicked. So in this case, we're using these to display summer camp schedules. So this is for the merit badge class schedule. And this is great because this allows you to display this content without taking up a bunch of scroll space on the page. Our sample code on this page will add one button at a time, and you can add as many as you need to display your content. The last option in this more advanced group is tabs. Tabs are a great way to display a lot of information compactly on a single page. They allow something of a choose your own adventure for your users to select the content that they want to see. If you want to add this to your site, you can find the sample code for 4 tabs on this page. The remaining advanced page options are a little easier to apply. And I'm going to show you how to implement them on your websites. And I'm just going to start at the top of the list with alerts. Alerts add a colorful box around your content to draw attention to it. And we have 4 different colors for you to choose from. To make use of this, you need to copy the code underneath the box of your choice, and then we'll copy that and add it to our website. So actually, I already have content on the page that I want to apply this to, so I'm only going to copy the opening div tag. So this will be another one that we wrap around existing content. So we'll copy the whole code. And this has a couple of stylings within it. So I'm going to copy the whole thing and put it ahead of the content that I want to include in my alert box. So my paragraph here, I'm going to copy the whole thing from the opening tag to the closing tag. And I'm going to cut that because I want to place it inside my alert box now. And then here we have our sample text. The strong makes the bold content bold, and then we have some standard content between. So I'm going to paste my paragraph between the 2 div tags, the opening div and the closing div. And let's save that and take a look at what how that appears on the finished page. All right, so here's our content inside an alert box, and now we have a lovely green box to draw attention to my content. Now, if you want to change the color of the alert, you can change the style simply by changing the word in the class. So in my content, I have the div class equals alert, alert, success. Success is the part that defines the color used. So if I go back to my admin manual page, the blue box has the style of info. Yellow is warning, red is danger. So those words just help us define what color we're using. So I'm going to use info and change this color box from green to blue. And now my box is blue. Now, I mentioned earlier that you can nest tags, and my starter example had something that was bold, but now I've decided that I actually do want to bold something in my original content. So I have the word inside bolded. I'm going to put content in italics. I'm using the WYSIWYG to make that change, and then looking at the source code for that. We have EM is the tag for emphasis. That tag is now closed, and then EM emphasizes or italicizes code, text, and then strong makes the word inside bold. All right, we can take a look at how that affects the finished product. Now we have content is italicized and inside is bold. Next, we have buttons. Everybody loves a nice button. Buttons are a great way to make a link stand out and help your users find it. For this example, I have used the WYSIWYG to add a hyperlink to some text already. And now I'm going to turn that link into a button. On our admin manual page, we have 6 different button colors to choose from, and each color has 6 different styles. The first 3 styles for each color are all the width of the button text. The last 3 styles are block styles that fit the available width of the screen. And for each set of buttons, we have small, medium, and large button heights and text heights. I'm going to choose a medium red button for today's example. And so I'm going to copy my button code here. And let's go and add that to the code on the page now. And as with alerts, I did copy the entire code so we can see which parts are important here. So here's the section where I want a button. I am going to paste my button code here. And then the next element that I need is the link. So we have the hyperlink code here, the class, which sets up our button and our button color here, and then the word link in the quotation marks is where we put the link for what we want to send our users to. So that is the hyperlink here where we're taking them to our buttons page. So I'm going to cut or copy that, doesn't really matter. And where the link is, I am going to paste the hyperlink that I want to use. Next, where we have the word text, we're going to place the text for our hyperlink or button, and that's this section right here where I say add a button. So I'm going to cut or copy that and replace the word text with add a button. Now the last thing here is I did say I want the target equals blank for my hyperlink. That's just the bit that sends it to a new tab. So I'm going to copy that and make sure that that gets included in my original hyperlink here. So I have the class with quotation marks surrounding the button code. Then I have the hyperlink reference and quotations surrounding my hyperlink. And then the target equals with quotation marks surrounding the underscore blank for the new page. Now, I don't really need the rest of this anymore, so I'm going to delete it. And let's save and take a look. So here's just the hyperlinked text. And now it's a shiny red button. All right. Now, Just like with the alerts, if I want to change this from a red primary button to a blue info button, here's my info color for blue, I just need to replace the word primary with the word info. So let's go take a look at that. So here's the button primary. Now we make it a button info, save, and our button is blue to match our alert.
So in this case, it probably would have been a little easier to just apply the class to an existing link. So another option would be to just, because the only part that needed to be changed was adding the button class. So if
Right.
you have a link and you have all sorts of text around it and you've configured that it's going to open in a new window and all that kind of other stuff, all you really need to do is add that class from the sample code.
Right. So that would be this portion.
Right, that makes it a button and defines the color and sizes and stuff like that. So that's the with all of this button sample code, the class part is the only part that is changing. So you can have your link, your text, however you want it, and have it set to open in a new window, and then just add that class.
Right. Yeah, so that actually does make sense that for a lot of the things that you're programming in the WYSIWYG already, sometimes all you need from our custom code is the class to change it to what you want it to be. So for example, I could just copy this, and then the part of my code that I need to change is just clicking in front of the href and pasting the class. All right, so the next item in the lineup for today is columns. Responsive columns are super useful as they help to use the horizontal space on your page to present content side by side, like displaying an image beside text. This is similar to using a table. Most of us are very familiar with tables. At least when you're on a larger screen, both tables and responsive columns create a grid to display your content. Where they primarily differ is when the viewer is using a mobile device. As the width of the screen narrows, so does your content. Responsive columns will eventually stack, keeping your content visible, whereas table columns will stay side by side and just squish. That said, there are times where you want to use one over the other depending on what you are using your columns for, or the table. Columns are great when the order of your content doesn't particularly matter, and you want your stuff to be visible on any screen. Since they stack on smaller screens, the content is allowed to take up the full available width and is easier to read. This is usually a better format for things like images or buttons or map code or other fun content since it looks better on phones. Tables are better when you are adding specific data and the order in which it appears matters. Like column A is the name and column B is that person's phone number. With tables, the cells will get narrower and the text inside will wrap, but the data will always be in the same position. Just remember that large, complex tables may look great on desktop, but be harder to decipher on mobile devices. Generally, I recommend keeping table content short, sweet, and to the point, and primarily focus on text. I will talk about tables and how to make sure tables look good and responsive later on in this webinar. So getting back to responsive columns. These are one of my personal favorite layout options because they let you custom arrange your content in a way that still looks amazing on smaller devices. I'm really going to get into the weeds on how this works, but that's because I feel like it's worth it to understand the framework. You can do so much more with layouts on your site by using responsive columns, and once you understand it, it is actually really easy to apply. So let's get into it. So, Our websites are built using Bootstrap 4, which the important part of that is that this allows you to divide a row on your page into 12 columns of equal width. However, these columns can also be combined. You can span columns to create one master column that is wider and takes up different amounts of horizontal space on the page. The grid you create here is responsive and will rearrange depending on the screen width or window size. We have several starter examples on our admin manual page that you can copy and paste into your page code. On my practice page, I have information for 3 different camps that takes up a lot of space up and down. So I want to set these up side by side in 3 equal columns. So I am going to use this first example from our admin manual page. So I'm going to go through the basic structure of this so you can confidently apply responsive columns to your website in any configuration. So the first element you need is to define the row, and that is going to use this div tag here. So this includes the class equals row. So we're going to copy that, and this is going to go ahead of my content in the page. So coming back here to the editor, here are my columns, and I want to set this ahead of my first camp. So I'm going to paste that here. And this opens the row element. Your columns will go inside this tag, so I'm not going to add a closing tag yet. That will come later. Now within our row, we need to define a column. So back in my responsive column code, I'm going to copy the next div tag, which defines a column. So this also includes the span, in this case, 4 of the 12 available columns. Then SM sets the breakpoint or the screen width when the columns start to stack for a small screen like a phone. So let's copy that div tag. And now I'm going to paste this after the row and before the first piece of content. All right, so then at the end of this column's content, which is my iframe for map code, I'm going to insert an end div tag with a slash that is going to close this column. So far, we have opened the row element and both opened and closed the first column. So now let's define the second and third columns. Since I'm using the same widths for all of my columns, I still have the column code on my clipboard and I can just paste this after this closing div tag and before the next set of columns or before the next set of data. Then I come back down under my next map code and close that column. There's my closing div tag. And one more time, I'm going to paste the column code ahead of the final camp property. Then I will close after the map code. And now I have open and closed all 3 columns. These closing tags are included in our sample code if you feel more comfortable copying and pasting them from here. But I just type them out because that lets me keep my more complicated opening div tag on the clipboard. So you do what feels more comfortable for you as you are getting into using this code. Now the last thing is I still haven't closed my opening row. So let's do that by entering a final end div tag. You'll have 2 closing div tags or end div tags at the end of a complete row. One for that last column and one for the row itself. Now, if you miss a closing div tag or you've accidentally added too many, your page layout will change on the published page, and the sidebar content, like your page menu or contacts, will bump to the bottom, and it'll look different. And don't worry about that. Just review your code to make sure you have the right number of closing div tags, and that should fix it and put the sidebar content back where it belongs. If you can't find where the code is incorrect, you can email us at support@tentaroo.com with a link to your page and an explanation of what you're working on, and we can help review the code to find the error. So let's save this and let's take a look at our published page. So we go from vertical content to horizontal content, which is much easier to view pretty much on any device. And then if we look at this in mobile view, it's still going to stack the 3 columns as rows instead. All right, so as I went through this example, I took some extra time to explain each element and how they work together. When applying this to your website, it is truthfully just copying and pasting the row and column codes and placing closing tags as necessary and doesn't take much time at all. Your column widths can easily be modified by just changing the number of columns that you span. You just need to make sure that all of the columns in your row add up to 12. So this is what I'm talking about, is just changing that number will change the width of your column as displayed. All right, so next up on our list is embedding video on your website. And when you go to video hosting sites like YouTube or Vimeo, the share code and embed version sets a specific height and width. These are not responsive codes. So we have coded a special class that allows your videos to resize when you are looking at it on a mobile device. So the class here is the same whether you are using YouTube or Vimeo. The main part that changes is going to be the root, the domain for the website you're using. We have examples of both for your convenience, so you can use this code as a start and then add a link, tie it to your video from there. So for this one, I'm going to use the YouTube version of things, and I'm going to use the whole code here for the embed code. So we will go down to where we have our responsive video, and I am going to paste that right here. All right, next I'm going to go to YouTube, and here I need to copy the unique identifier for my video. And the way to find that is to go into the address bar. I would honestly ignore the share button down here. And the unique identifier is everything past the V equals. So we'll copy that. Now we noticed in some different views in YouTube, they are adding like an ampersand and extra characters after that. You don't need that part of it. So if you see something with an ampersand up there, just copy up to that point, but not the ampersand part of things. All right, and then in my sample code, the 3 zeros here are all I need to replace with that unique identifier. The 3 zeros in our sample just serve as a placeholder, and then we put our specific code in that, and that's it. Now when we look at our page and refresh, we have a responsive video. If you nest this inside like responsive columns, then your overall displayed video size will shrink to fit the available space. So it'll look good however you choose to display your video. All right, so the next item in our lineup is inline boxes. And inline boxes can be used to display scrolling content within your web page. These are excellent ways to display a large amount of content while keeping the scrolling space for the page to a minimum. A common use for these is to show your real-time class availability from the events module, such as weeks of summer camp or your merit badge events. And for this code, we're going to start by copying the inline box code from the top. And this sets up an iframe on your page. We do have another sample below that has a specific link to something in Great Sky Country. So we're just going to use this basic example here. All right, and now I'm going to go and paste that into our source code. And actually, I haven't talked about this yet, but I'm going to use this maximize button here next to the source. That's going to make things large enough that I can see more of the code at one time. And then as I scroll, I'm only scrolling through this box instead of scrolling through the main page editor. Sometimes makes things a little bit easier to navigate when you're working in source code. All right, so here's my inline boxes section. I'm going to paste that code here. And now I'm not quite done yet because now I need to get a link to add to this box. And for that, I am going to visit the events module briefly. All right, so under your event dashboard and scrolling down to reports, there are 3 reports available that work in this inline box code. So these are each the HTML code options where you can get class schedules for youth, adults, or groups. For this, I'm going to use the youth version of the report. When I generate that, it's going to open a new tab in the browser that has the live data with my merit badge event. And I am going to copy the address from the address bar. And then when I'm in my page editor, that full URL is going to go in the link space. Okay, let's minimize and save. And now here is our inline box that has a scrolling space for our live merit badge data. If you're using this style of box to display multiple event class schedules, you may also want to add a header above each box with the event name, like week 1 or week 2. And that way your users know which week, which event you're looking at. All right, so next let's talk about adding images within the content box so they appear alongside your text. I have an example set up for us to look at today to get an idea of how this looks and what is possible, especially when you combine some additional features here. Adding images in the content box is considered an intermediate to advanced coding option because it requires a few extra steps, like setting up a separate draft page for hosting photos, and it is often best combined with other coding features like responsive columns. With responsive columns, you can set your image up next to your text, and that helps to reduce the overall size of the image as displayed. You can also add a hyperlink to your image to link to more information, which adds an interactive element to your page. Another trick is you can even hyperlink the smaller image to a larger size of the image, so when your users click on it, they can see it much larger and get more information from that image. For most users, the galleries are the best option for displaying photos, especially since those photos are used in other parts of the app, like the featured carousel and the events and facilities modules. The galleries are designed to do most of this work for you, and adding images within the text just gives you some more flexibility for how that is shown to your users. So let's go through setting up an image within the text. Unlike the other options I have gone through, I don't have anything set up on my sample page yet because that is part of the process. So I am going to start with creating the content. And this means that I need to host my image in a page gallery, and that's where I can get the link. So I have a special page set up on my website already that is called Draft Photos. As I've mentioned previously, Draft keeps this page from being found in the website searches without a direct link.
So, Annika, I just want to jump in here a little bit and talk about the approach here. So, if you're embedding the image on a page, you basically need to upload the image somewhere in order to have an image so that you can embed it.
Right.
And the approach that Annika is showing here is, you could upload the image into a top or bottom gallery on the page that you're using the image on, but then that kind of means that the image would appear twice. So it would appear in the top gallery or bottom gallery that you uploaded it to on the current page, as well as wherever you're adding it within the content. So the concept here is to add a page that's just not going to show up on your site using this draft feature that we talked more about in one of the other webinars, but basically, like Annika said, it just keeps it hidden. So if unless someone has the address to this page, unless you actually shared a link to this page with someone, they're never going to be able to find it.
Right.
So it's a great way that we can just upload the photos here, and then that puts them on the servers, and we can grab a link to that and use it somewhere else on your website. So it's just like a spot to upload images to. And we just had a comment in the chat here about adding them directly in resources. That is an older method that we used to mention to councils to use, but the drawback is that resources aren't designed for images. They're really designed for PDFs or documents. They're not designed for images. You can't get different image sizes from it, and it's also much slower to host images under resources. It's okay, and you don't need to fix anything if you currently have images under resources, but if you want your pages to load faster, we would suggest switching to this new method where you host the images under the gallery, because then they're going to, the place, kind of like, it's technical, but the place where it puts the images is really designed for image hosting, and it's really going to be a lot faster for your users, and it will let you resize the images and do a lot more with it.
Right.
So yeah, thanks for letting me just jump in on that and kind of explaining like what we're trying to do here with this draft page.
Right. So the draft photos page, I'll just use a quick analogy, is kind of like your resources section specifically for photos. And you can host photos on this draft photos page that you use anywhere. It doesn't even have to be just on your Tenaroo website. You could share those elsewhere as well. It's online hosting for your photos. All right.
Yeah, going kind of following along with that. I mean, you really should only use them on your Tentrue website, but I guess one example that isn't really on a Tentrue website where you could use these is the message center. So you can use the same exact code that Annika is going to be showing today to embed an image in an email to send out like when someone registers for summer camp. And that's one great use of that. So you could embed the image from here in the email, and then anytime someone gets that email, it will have the image on it.
It's a great connection. That's a really great connection. Thank you, Moshe. All right. So you add any photos you want to be able to share on pages into one of the galleries. So I've added things to the top gallery. And then the best layout I found for this is Gallery Grid. Other layouts work as well, but what I like about Gallery Grid is this lets me see all of my images rather quickly, so I can skim through the photos that I have added, and then you can select the photo that you want to upload, and when you click on that, that's going to load it in a carousel. And from here, you can right-click on that image and copy the image address. Now let's go back to the page editor and back into my sample content. Then we're going to go into the image section. Yeah, here we are. So it there we go. All right, so I'm going to paste this here, but I'm not quite done. This right now is just holding this code here because I need something else to make this work on the page. So let's go back to the admin manual. And here on this page, it does include instructions for how to do this. And I've already gone through the first and second steps. So now we go to the third step, which talks about adding this code to your page. So I am going to copy this in its entirety and paste that after my image code. And jumps around on me, it's okay. So here's my image code. And now I want to grab this whole thing and we'll cut that because I don't need it above. And we're going to replace the word link between the two quotation marks with our image code. Now, image tags are a little different from the other tags I've talked about. Image tags self-close, so you can see this slash way over here on the right. You don't need a separate closing tag for an image because the content is encompassed within that image tag. One more thing here with this particular image. When I copy this from the carousel, it is automatically applying a style of 1500 pixels. That's the maximum dimension that this image will be displayed at. And that's kind of a big image. We also have one other size you can use, which is 720 pixels, which you don't want to edit anything else in the address, just the pixels. And now this will embed a smaller image that will load even faster. All right, I'm going to switch out. Yes, Moisha.
So if you're yeah, that isn't really a style, but it is like part of the where we upload images. It allows you to transform the maximum size of the image. So let's say that you upload an image that's like 2,500 pixels or 3,000 pixels, some huge image. This will just change the maximum. It will just resize it down if it's above what pixels you have there. And we only support certain pixels, so reach out to us if you want to use something else. But really, you should probably most of the time use one of those two, the 1500 or the 720. And so it will only really do anything if your image is bigger than that. Now, one reason why you might want to use a 720 instead of the 1500 is that 1500 is that's good if you're wanting a pretty big image on the screen, but if you're just kind of trying to use something for like a thumbnail, or maybe like, let's say you have it in columns and you have like, say, contact photos or something on the left and then information on the right, you don't need such a big image if you're just trying to show like a smaller thumbnail, like in the example that Anako showed earlier. So that's one case where you'd want to use that smaller option for it.
Mm-hmm. And then if you want to reduce the visible size of your image, then you can use the responsive columns to make it take up less of the page. All right, now I also mentioned earlier that you can add hyperlinks to images. If you're comfortable with typing hyperlink code, you can type that right here in the WYSIWYG right here in the source code, or you can switch back to the WYSIWYG. Let's scroll down a bit. Got lots of stuff added to this page now. And here's our responsive image. You can select that and then use the WYSIWYG tool to add a hyperlink to add it in here, and then you don't have to manually code that in source. Okay, let's go ahead and save that change so we can take a look at how it appears on the final page. All right, so there is my image. And if I switch to mobile view here, it's going to automatically resize that to fit my screen. And then, again, like I said, if you want this to appear smaller on a large screen, you can use responsive columns to control how big that image is displayed. So these are the basic steps to add an image to your text area. Another use for the responsive image class is actually on our home page. So let's go take a look at that right now. In the calendar section, our default image for here on the right is this Scout Salute image. You can replace that Scout Salute image with an image of your choice. So I am going to show you how to do that now. And I have already written up the code that I need, but you can follow the same steps I already showed you to make this happen. So I'm going to come over here and go into Website Settings. And in the calendar box, we have this space called Featured Calendar Code. And that adds HTML markup to the box on the right of the calendar code space. So I'll add this responsive image code with a photo that I have in a gallery. And then we'll go take a look. And now it is the Scout Me In logo. All right. The next item up on the list is tables. These are actually one of the easiest options on this list. However, as I mentioned earlier, please don't overuse tables on your website since they could cause problems for your mobile users. One of the things that make these easy is that you can build your basic content or you can build your basic table and add all the content in the WYSIWYG. Then all you need to do is pop in a class from our admin manual page to change the style. So I'll show you how to do that. So when you are in your content box, let me come on down here and go to the very bottom. You can click on this Tables button, and that will launch a dialog box where you can define how your table works. The important things to set here are the number of rows and columns, define your headers if you want them, and then pretty much everything else you can clear. So I'm just going to go through and clear some of these settings, especially the width. And if you clear all of these, your beginner table is going to be responsive. If you keep those, it may not be. Not the end of the world. It's just going to be static with the content you put in it. So I'm going to go ahead and just add that so you can see here is my content. This is content. So there we've got where we can build our table right there in the WYSIWYG. And then I'm going to go back to the published page for a second to look at the table that I had already added. So this is already mobile responsive because that's our default styles when you remove all that extra formatting. So if we look at this in mobile view, there we go. It has shrunk down, narrowed columns to show me all my content. It uses a blue styling that looks good on most websites, but it's kind of plain. It's a little boring over here. Let's spice things up with a custom style that's going to change that color. So for that, we're going to go back to the admin manual. So we have 5 different color schemes to choose from. We also offer a plain grid with just an outline and a version that offers less styling, no styling, doesn't have any outlines or anything, so it doesn't even really look like a table. And sometimes that's appropriate for how you want to display your data. So I think I am going to use this red style for my sample table. So in this case, I built the table in the WYSIWYG. All I need is this class. So I'm going to copy that, class equals Tenaru1 with the quotation marks. And let's go to the source view. Oops, too far. and we'll add that to the first table. So here we have the opening tag for the table. I'm going to add a space and paste my style, or sorry, paste my class. And my table is now red and includes some additional row styling for the different colors in that style. So I think I actually want this table to be purple instead. My favorite color. Let's turn it purple. So in this case, the class is almost identical, but instead of it being Tenaroo 1, it's Tenaroo 5. So all I need to do to change the style assigned to this table is to change the 1 to a 5. So let's do that. Save, and now we have a purple table. All right, so that was the last of the advanced page options from that section on the manual, but I'm not quite done yet. I want to show you an additional class that we offer by request, and that is the class card. I actually have an example of this on our admin manual on the home page, so this is a live example of how this works. So these four sections are class card. These four sections use the card class. What this does is it adds a drop shadow around the section, and it also bevels the corners a little bit. And as you can see, this is combined with some of our other styles. There's some responsive columns here, an inline image, buttons. You can do a lot with this. So if you'd like to make use of this on your website, please send us an email to support@tenaroo.com and request that we add the class card for you. The card class. The next thing that I want to show is actually in the page editor. So let's go back into our sample page. This one isn't in the content box though. This is one that I mentioned in the Building Web Pages webinar. I actually have a few boxes that I plan on teaching in other webinars. One of those for this webinar is sidebar content. So sidebar content is going to place whatever content here on the right-hand side of your web page. If you have other sidebar content, this section will appear below it. And this has two fields, a title field that uses heading 2, and then a content box where you need to enter HTML markup. So the title formats it for you. The content box, you have to add HTML formatting here. You can use this box for all kinds of things, like a call to action button or a newsletter sign up form. We actually use this again on our admin manual on the support page with our MailChimp newsletter sign up form. By the way, if you aren't getting our newsletters, you can sign up here. An easy way to create content for your sidebar content box is to start with the WYSIWYG. You can enter the content that you want here and then add your formatting with the WYSIWYG buttons. You can add your buttons, button code and everything else here. And then in the source view, you can copy what you want and it's already formatted for you, less chance of human error making mistakes. And then you can come down here and paste it in your sidebar content box. So I'm actually going to type sidebar content here as a point of reference. So let's take a look at that. All right, there's our sidebar content with the coding that we added for our alert copied over. Your code can also be edited or even just written straight up within the sidebar content box if you know how to code, just to type it yourself. All of that can be done in the sidebar. Okay, folks, I'm gonna take it up one more notch. For some of you, you'll be tempted to grab other code from elsewhere on the internet to use on your site. However, you'll often find that the code you add is stripped out by the content editor. Some types of code, like inline font styles and scripts from third-party developers, are not directly supported by the content editor, and in fact, our WYSIWYG is programmed to strip them out. It does this in order to help maintain a consistent look and feel on your site that will work on all devices. Certain types of code are not supported because using a lot of different styles can easily lead to a site that is messy or unmanageable for other council staff. Additionally, adding random code to your site can be a major security issue unless you know that the code you're adding is safe. That said, you do have the ability to make exceptions to this. For example, if you want to include a countdown timer on your site, you can do that, but you'll need to use one of our workarounds so your code isn't stripped out.
Sonika, I'd like to jump in and just say a little bit more about why we strip out inline styles. I mean, I think inline scripts, that's kind of obvious. There can be a lot of security issues with that. But inline styles, part of the reason why we don't allow them is because if there's staff turnover, someone else at your council may not be able to manage that type of thing. Another reason is that it's just really easy with inline styles to make a website that looks really messy. And what we're trying to do is encourage councils to use more of the built-in tools where they're not doing a lot of manual stuff that can also look more messy. But even if you have good design, and you know exactly what you want, and it's going to look great, and it's consistent across your entire website. If you're hard coding stuff like that, if you're hard coding colors, then we can't make a global change to your website to change. Like, let's say that you want to restyle your website. We can't globally change that to look a different way if you're hard coding certain spots to look in a specific way, like specific colors or specific fonts. So it makes it so that we can't help you with like larger scale changes to styles if you want that. That said, with the classes that we give you for styling, we can most of the time make those custom to your website. So let's say that with the danger alert, you want that a different color. You want to have purple alerts. We could change the danger alert for your website to be purple. And then anytime you want to have a purple alert, you just to use danger, and that's a lot more maintainable because we can change it globally on the entire site for you as needed, without having a lot of custom code sprinkled around everywhere. So I hope that gives a little bit more background on why we don't support inline style specifically. Now, the timer that Annika is about to show is a script, and usually script code does get stripped out, but I think in the one that she's showing, it would still work. It's still going to work even with it being custom. But she's just going to use this as an example of code that could get stripped out. And I think it's going to tweak it a little bit. It's going to change it some, but actually this is an example of a countdown timer that you could use that the editor supports. So back to you,
That's
Annika.
right. Thanks, Moisha. That was a great explanation. I appreciate it. Okay. Yes, like he said, I do have a countdown timer that I'm going to be adding um, to the website, and this particular one is from timeanddate.com, and they provide iframe, and iframe is something that our website supports. We used it when we were adding um, the inline box to scroll through the merit badge schedules. So this is supported. It's not going to strip it out, but it is a third-party code. So I'm using this as an example today of how you can paste this into your content. This is actually, I'm starting with the harder example first. Because if you're using a script or something that you know is okay, it's safe, and you add it here, the WYSIWYG, and I'll just switch between the WYSIWYG and the source view for a moment. The WYSIWYG may take important chunks out of your script. So this one is okay. It's not going to break, but others could. So the way to add code to the content box that gets stripped by the WYSIWYG is actually to always make sure that you are editing it in source view. So I didn't save that yet. I'm going to paste this back in as it originally existed, and I'm going to click save. So that is now a part of my page, and we can take a look at it here just to see how it appears. And time and date does have some formatting options for how you want that to show up. And then when we go back to the source view in the saved page, it's added some paragraph tags, and it's moved around a few things. If I want to recall the original code that I had saved, I can do that by clicking on the app refresh button in the top right corner. And that will bring me back to my straight iframe. And if you have scripts that get stripped out, it'll recall that as well. Now, this option is a little bit more complicated because of the WYSIWYG stripping the code out. Because this applies even if you're editing other aspects of the pages, you're just adding a contact. If you don't remember to switch to source view and refresh and then save with that in source view, your widget may break. For this option, it would then be best to limit who on your team is allowed to edit the page, because it's easy for that custom code to get stripped out if they forget to use the workaround. For similar reasons, we recommend keeping a backup text file with the last version of your page content so you can quickly revert if it accidentally gets stripped out. And we don't have a way of recalling past information if it's overwritten in the text editor. So that's an important thing to keep in mind if you decide to add this in the content box. That said, we have another option for you that's a little bit easier and it doesn't get stripped. So this easier option is to use one of our code-specific boxes on the page. And those include the map code box, the embed form code box, and the sidebar content box. These don't strip the code out since they don't use a WYSIWYG editor. However, they also define where on the page your custom widget appears. The newsletter form that I showed you earlier is set up in the sidebar content box. It's a third-party code, so if I put it in the source code for the content, it would get stripped out, but it doesn't in that sidebar box where I've added it. We really only advise using third-party code in one of these workarounds if you are sure the code you are adding is safe. If you aren't certain, you can run it by us and we can review it with you, or we might have a suggestion to meet your needs in another way. For grins, I'm going to go ahead and add my iframe to the sidebar content, and we'll just take a quick look at that as well. So there you have it. It's there in the sidebar. Okay, everybody take a deep breath. This webinar covered a lot of rather advanced page coding options that can take your Tentaroo website to the next level, customizing it to give your users a great experience when visiting your site. I suggest setting up a draft page to play around with the different elements prior to using them on a live page so you can test drive them first. If you have questions about using any of the features I showed you today, please send us an email to support@tentaroo.com or schedule a training at admin.tentaroo.com/training. Also, if you want to learn a bit more about how HTML works, there are many helpful online tutorials and YouTube videos that dive deeper than we did today. Just keep in mind that not all code will be supported in the Tenru website.